We're going back at the request of my co-chair to Senate Bill 1545, an act creating an independent correctional oversight office to facilitate the recommendations of the Special Legislative Commission on Structural Racism in Correctional Facilities of the Commonwealth. Mac Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
How are you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you, sir?
And we apologize we couldn't get you in last week.
Oh, no worries. I'm happy that you could make this opportunity for me. I'd first like to thank the chairs, Timothy, also Mr. Gonzalez, for this opportunity to come to speak before you and the body. Welcome. And I want to first acknowledge that I think what has been beautiful about this whole ordeal for me is that having the ability to listen to the incarcerated community gives a whole perspective on when we try to think in terms of, these types of measures, whether or not these types of measures should be passed and how it impacts the incarcerated community. But what's often left out is how it impacts those who are correction officers also, right? And I wanted to first kind of start off with a conversation just to bring us all up to speed that discrimination does not just happen to the Black and brown community, incarcerated community, but it also happens to the officers that are there too, who are Black and brown. And if you go and look a closer examination, what you'll find is that most of those officers who are Black and brown work from the 11 to 7 shift to avoid the racist discrimination that happens on the first and second shift, right? And the reason why I want to emphasize this is because I think it gives context, right, to why this bill, is really required, right? Because if that's happening to them, and this is what they had to do in order to maintain and feed their families, right, then what is happening to those of us who are incarcerated, right, and trying to get access to programs and entitlements that by law we're supposed to have access. And there's no way for any level of accountability to actually say who's getting access to these programs and who's not. So the collection of data becomes necessary in these instances so that our legislators and partners, community stakeholders can actually know where the money is going to, right? How it's being allocated, and then also, who's getting services and how do we set our communities up so that we can best ensure that everyone is getting access and then able to transition out safely into society. I want to, voice my support for the independent oversight committee and its an enforcement mechanism. I know that, and I want to thank Senator Miranda for filing it. And I also want to say I understand there's another bill that Senator Brownsberger has put in. And I think that if we report both of these bills out, we can actually merge them together and strengthen them, right, in a way that makes sense all the way around the board and benefit every community and that is impacted. So I think that we can all agree that that oversight is necessary, and I'm hoping that you please vote this out favorably.
Sir, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate you taking the time to come in and offer your perspective. Thank you. It's valuable. Chair Gonzalez.
Yeah, thank you, Mac, and thank you again. Last week was a long session, and I know for your advocacy, and thank you for your advocacy. Tell me from your experience, your personal experience, what do you think is the main issue that a study would come up with? What do you think?
I think that what we'll find is that the challenges that happens out in the world is also prevalent behind the wall, meaning that people walk in with their biases and they go unchecked because it's a community that's largely closed off, right? And so what we'll find is that even on the basic hygiene level, the department done went from giving us 10 to 7 to now 5 underwear, and now they reduced that to 3 underwear for every individual, right? And how do you survive off of 3 underwear for 6 months? So it's forcing folks to try to have to go to canteen and purchase this, which the state already gives money to for their care and custody. So it raises the question, like, where's this money going to? How is it? And then we see that this increasing budget of the department is ever so exploding, right, to $800 million now. But, and only 1% still remains being, that's actually spent on rehabilitation. So now, how do we strengthen that? How do we, well, I think what it'll report, to answer your question, is that it'll show that certain folks are not getting access, right? And not getting access to minimums, pre-releases, those very important programs that will allow folks to transition safely into the community, have some money to come home and actually buy a house or an apartment so that they can transition. And that'll alleviate the state from having to spend money on them in other ways, So I think that it'll show these discrepancies, but it also has the ability for us to fix something that is long overdue.
Well, thank you, because I think, again, once we start turning the terminology around from correctional institutions to rehabilitation centers, which is, I think, what you're advocating for, and many of the folks that are within the system, but also the family relatives, including those that are at the top, from correctional officers. Thank you for acknowledging them, because they also suffer some of the issues that we are all seeing in the world today. But thank you for your advocacy, and I look forward to continue working with you.
Thank you.
Any other
Questions or comments from members of the committee?
Quick comment, please.
Representative Zaros.
Thank you. This is a world that we don't often hear about or see. And for you to give it to us, a real life presence and examples, and that you included the corrections officers, I think that's very helpful. And I thank you for being here and almost teaching us some of the things that go on and see how we can help.
Thank you.
And to that point, I didn't know about, the underwear.
Right.
I think that's valuable experience. That's,
Yes.
why did it go from 6 to 3? I don't know. There may be a real reason to that, but I just, I think those are real lived experiences, to my point before, that helps us to be able to look at a different picture sometimes than what we expect. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think late last week, I was in an event where you speak, and I think your advocacy is commendable. I believe what you're doing is amazing. Had you been incarcerated before?
Yes, 33 years, mostly on a crime I didn't commit.
You're a prime example that if we invest in helping those who are in jail serving right now, if we invest in them creating conditions so they can, before they get out of work, they can get an ID, that they can learn a trade, it's likely that they become an advocate like you are, so valuable for the community, so valuable for their family. And I think you are a prime example of what we can accomplish if we work together in this. Thank you for what you're doing, and you can count with this committee support, because what you do is improving the public safety and homeland security of our state. Your advocacy is valuable, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Can I just say that there are many men and women behind the wall who are serious about rehabilitation, whether they did the crime or not. They're trying to spearhead programs that really speak to their cultural development. And a lot of those, they face a lot of backlash and challenges in trying to get the basics for those programs, such as books, just basic material to educate themselves. And what the department has really been good at is just reducing a program to being just a group of people talking about culture rather than experiencing culture, which creates this, this stifling ability when it comes to rehabilitation. And this is why I think it's so important that when you talk to a lot of the incarcerated people who are there right now having this experience, who may not cannot articulate it as clear sometimes, but you can hear the hurt and pain that they're experiencing, because there's an understanding that at least someone is supposed to be playing fair, right? And when they don't see that fairness, what do we say as a society? How do we expect them to come to society and then say every rule, every law should be applied fairly when they're being taught a counterproductive message?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mac.
Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Further?
Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.